Bake some cake. I don't know if I'm baking. No, I'm not baking cake. We are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons in a second. I'm just doing my sound check as I normally do, making sure all of my technical bits and pieces are working correctly, and if they are, we'll get started. It seems like the sound is coming through pretty well, so that's good news. So I will unplug my earbuds or whatever you call them. Okay, now you will find the start time for this video down in the description if you want to get past all of my waffle and setup and all that sort of stuff. So you're welcome to go and check that out now. Well, not now, later when it's published by YouTube, and I'm ready to go. Now, I normally, with my live streams, what I normally do is I present absolutely everything first, and then once I've presented everything, I then open it up for questions and answers and things like that, which is exactly the same format I'm going to use today, okay, for those of you who are wondering. So I think this is probably going to take me about less than 10 minutes, I would imagine, and then I'll go from there. Okay, all right, let's get started, shall we? Everything seems to be working correctly, yep, and we will buzz over to here and get started. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and I'm going to talk about character death. Now, I've talked about character death before in other videos. It is one of those contentious things that people sort of argue about how you should approach character death. So I thought what I would do for today is I would present you with one of my variant rules for character death. I know a lot of people are going to say, Fred, there's no such thing as a variant rule for character death. But actually there is, because I say there is, and I can have any variant rule just like you that I want. So I have a character death resurrection variant rule. I use this in my game all the time. It is pretty standard for all of my groups, okay, so it doesn't really change anything anywhere. Doesn't matter who I run it for, whether it's new players, old players, public games or not. I generally run the same system, okay. This variant rule is not in the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you're looking through the Dungeon Master's Guide trying to find something there, no, it's not going to be there anywhere. It's my own house rule. I also realize that a few people will disagree with me and think it's not a variant rule, and that's fine. You're allowed to have your own opinion. This is just my opinion of how I think. I find this a really good system. I think it works really well for me. It might work well for you, it might not. The tradition for character death is to use the following method. In the Dungeon Master has a player character dies, and they usually use one of two different methods that are available to them. The first one being that they will usually look at the option for the player to simply make a new character, which is fine. You can make a new character if the player wants to make a new character. That's always fine. That's certainly one option for the player if they want to. But the second option that often comes up as well, that is utilized usually in your very traditional games or your standard method for dealing with character death, and that is provided that one of the player's characters in the group has access to some sort of resurrection magic, something that will be able to raise them from the dead, some sort of resurrection magic such as revivify or raise dead or reincarnate or true resurrection. So all of those sort of things that tend to be used by people in a traditional game of Dungeons and Dragons. That's usually how most people approach character death. The thing is, for me, I've found that I don't find it very satisfying, and I've noticed my players don't find it very satisfying. This can mean that a player does not really get to choose if they can continue playing the same character. It's really set up that the Dungeon Master is deciding this is how it's going to work. The Dungeon Master can have any system they like and play, but I feel like that takes away the choice that the player might have. Because if they don't want to make a new character and they don't have access to resurrection magic, then they're really dependent on the Dungeon Master to help them continue playing the game. And that's why I don't really like that particular system very much. I'm not a fan of it, and I know I do feel that it's very traditional, and it's the sort of what people have been used to doing for many, many years, and we tend to follow traditions just for the sake of following a tradition sometimes. So here is how I approach character death, which is a little bit different, not exactly the same as traditional, but there's just a slight variation, okay? Slight variation. My character death resurrection variant rule always leaves the final decision in the player's hands. That is the key thing to understand. The final decision is always in the player's hands. They make the final decision about whether they keep playing that character or they pick up a new character. I don't make that decision at all. I have nothing to do with it because it's not my character, so I leave that to them. I give the players the following choices. I have like 3 different choices that they can use, and it covers pretty much everything you can imagine. They can, as normal, they can just create a new character if they really want to, and I have no issue. And I've found that a lot of players, when their character dies, they will just choose, look, I just want to make a new character. I feel like this character died. I don't want it coming back. I'm just going to leave it dead. And that's fine. The other one is that if the player has a party member and in the group, one of the characters has access to resurrection magic, any kind of, raised dead or something like that, they can use that just as normal. It's exactly the same, hasn't changed in the slightest. So they can use resurrection magic of some kind. The third option is the one that's slightly different to what you're used to. And that is the Dungeon Master gets to decide how to resurrect the player's character. And I will resurrect a player's character if they want me to. What I do is I stipulate a complication. Now, it's not a punishment. I know a lot of people are thinking, Fred, that sounds a little bit strange. This is how it works, okay? I resurrect the player's character in a multitude of different ways. I've used many, many different ways of doing that. I've got a whole bunch of videos on it, by the way. And I work in a complication. It has to be something that the player can resolve with their character. So if I build in a complication, I've always have a backup way that they can get rid of that complication rather than it stay in the game indefinitely, because I don't want that to happen. I want them to be able to work towards adjusting things. Now, why do I do that? There's actually a really good reason for doing it. One of the reasons why I do this is because now it allows me to bring the player into a new story arc. I can now give them character growth. I'm literally going from taking their character who was part of a machine, the group, and now I'm giving them their own special sort of side quest, you might say, which I think is quite cool. Myself, I actually think that's a good way of operating. So I consider character death and heroes. If the players are playing a character or they're playing as heroes or whatever, I always consider their character death or the hero's death as part of their story. Lots of stories talk about heroes who perish but then raise from the dead or come back in some way. It's actually quite common. So also we have plenty of heroes who die and don't come back, but I see it as it's Dungeons and Dragons. Character death is just going to be part of their story. It is not the end of their story. It is just a continuation in some way, if they want it, that is. So there are many story reasons that I might sort of use to sort of integrate this concept. One of the most common ones that I've pulled up before, and that is that they are working for some sort of higher power. So maybe a paladin is raised from the dead by their deity or god, or maybe by another paladin. So yes, I will often use that as a tool. It might be a holy person, and there's a reason why they're being raised. It's because there's a higher purpose that they have to achieve, and if they aren't able to achieve that purpose, then maybe that gift that has been given to them will be removed. Maybe they will lose the life that they have gained. Another really good way of building it into the character, and that is to use revenge. Revenge is very common. So usually I work around some sort of trauma that the player's character has suffered, or in some case maybe it's a great loss, and I'll utilize that. Now the reason for doing that is because that's what tends to fuel revenge. So I pick something that will sort of go for the family, go for the close friends, do something that will undermine them significantly. So I go with revenge. That's a really good one too. Another one that I have enjoyed and done a few times, and I don't use often, but I do use, and that is I will use sort of like a blessing from fairy folk or some sort of magical beast, a unicorn or something like that. And they are doing them a favor because probably this character is got a good heart, has been doing things during the adventure that I felt were warranted to give them the gift of life. And so I'll pick like a fairy, or sometimes I'll find just like a fantasy creature. Unicorns and fairies are good, but there are other ones you can use as well. Another one that I enjoy using, and I haven't used this very often, in fact I'm trying to remember if I have at all, but I know I've got it penciled away, and that is a prayer. A group of people or a community who pray for the soul of the individual, and that actually brings that fallen character or hero back to life. And often the community will do this because they feel that this person is a saint, or that they really need to have them around to help them in some way. So they have a goal and a focus to achieve because the gift of life has been given to them by a community of people or creatures or humanoids or something like that. So I find that's a fun one too. Another really good one, which we kind of sort of tapped into, and that is a favor from a god. A god blesses them with the gift of life, and only if they actually perform some of the duties that that god has in store for them. So there's a complication that they have to work towards. So all of these quite fun. So God is a common one. Next I would say is going to have to be something like a holy person. You can do the same. Look, I've said holy person, but I think when I say holy person, often it's like a celestial being of some kind, or a priest, possibly an acolyte of some kind. Anybody who I think would have sufficient power to be able to bring somebody back from the dead. It might even be a cleric of some kind. So yes, usually a holy person who needs their skills and their heart to perform a task or mission, a quest of some kind. So those are the general ones. The one I use very rarely, but I have used from time to time, a little bit darker, a little bit scarier, and it kind of depends on the character and the player whether I use it or not, and that is a wizard performs some sort of dark ritual and uses them as a servant. So they're bound to that particular wizard either for a good outcome or a good goal or an evil goal, and so they might find themselves having to do some horrible things, but eventually there's an opportunity to break free of their servitude or their bondage, whether that's because they've had to do something for that wizard that was a good act or an evil act. So works great with somebody like a warlock. Doesn't work so great with other characters such as clerics and paladins. Can be a bit complicated, particularly if you're going on the evil side. They have to complete an evil quest of some kind. So those are the sorts of things that I utilize in my game in terms of character death and resurrection. That's my sort of look and take on it. Now, I don't know that you'll necessarily find this hugely useful to you, but I thought I would share it because I know a lot of people have been asking me about the types of variant rules that I use, and this is one that is definitely there. I've been using it for a long time. So whether your character is killed by a dark, shadowy, ghostly beholder, or with eye rays, or it's been torn asunder by a hydra with its many heads as it's chewed it up, or it's been absorbed into some sort of shambling mound as it's been fighting off this rather dangerous compost heap. Yeah, there's lots of different ways of doing it and lots of different ways why I would do it. Okay, so if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. Consider subscribing to my channel if you like this sort of content. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you did so by watching this video, and thank you very much. I have hundreds more. There's plenty more out there if you really want to check it out, and I would suggest check out some of my stuff. I've got plenty of stuff for players and dungeon masters. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description there are like affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and that just helps me continue to do this sort of thing. And this is your opportunity to ask questions, give feedback, tell me about your resurrection rules. I would be really interested to hear from other people, not so much about whether they agree or disagree with this variant rule, but more about what sort of resurrection they have used to keep a player's character in the game so they can continue to play. I would be really interested in that area. So yeah, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Bop, bop. Give me a second. Bam. All right, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. You should be pulling up the other screen. And let's have a look in the chat. It's pretty quiet tonight, which is fine with me. Hi, Matt. Glad I can make it. I'm glad you can make it too, Matt. I was a little bit tongue-tied. I think it's because I'm tired. It's been a rough day. Rabid Human EST. Yep. Rabid Human EST. I'm just trying to think where that sort of... I don't think we've met before. Matt, I was wondering if you had time for a few questions. Matt, I am here. Throw your questions out. Throw them at me. Do them. I will do them now. And it doesn't have to relate to character death and resurrection, okay? That's fine. If it's a player question, it's a dungeon master question, whatever. I'll deal with it. We haven't actually. Okay, yep, I kind of thought you were new. But welcome to the live stream, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Or at least found it slightly useful, since I know your time is precious, like everybody else's. First time when I catch a live stream. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it. Hi, Travis. Just saying hi, late to the party. Not a problem, Travis. I understand these videos come out at a time when a lot of people are sleeping, depending on where you are in the world. Okay, so Matt's got his questions, so let's have a look. Okay, Matt, what do you got here? I'm new to being a DM, and my players are, I guess, looking for loot on every enemy. Should I just tell them they have normal equipment and a little gold? I think, what's that? I don't want to give them too much. Okay, here's a solution, Matt. The first solution you won't like. The second solution will be more useful to you, okay? The first solution is you are never going to have this problem not exist. You're a new dungeon master. As experienced dungeon masters, we all still have to deal with the same problem, okay? You'll be guaranteed, because players they're trained by those who came before them, that when they kill monsters, they loot the monster and they should find something. Whether it's be gold, equipment, or something useful, there's going to be something there. They play video games, and most video games, when you kill something, there's something to pick up as well. Okay, it's sort of like a reward system. So you will always have this problem coming up. My suggestion to you is decide what types of things you can live with putting on a monster. Sometimes it makes no sense that, say for example, what are you going to find on a Hydra? You're never going to find pockets on a Hydra. It might not, Hydras move around, they might not have a lair. They might not even have a location where they store a treasure hoard. That's more like a dragon, okay? So it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. What about a compost heap? The compost heap probably didn't try to eat anything that it couldn't absorb into its system. So it's not going to have any treasure either. What you can do, if you want to drop stuff that isn't gold or significant pieces of equipment that sort of save them having to spend their precious money, or you don't want to give them magic items, is go through the trinket table. Okay, in the player's handbook, in the equipment area, there is a trinket table, and I would use that. Just roll on there, and that's what they find. And if you throw out enough of those sorts of things, some of them will consider it rubbish and junk, and other players will see it as a really good, interesting inclusion into the game, and it's easy for you because you don't have to figure out too much. There's also an app, quite a handy app for generating treasure for a single monster and treasure hoards. And if you have a look on my channel, you'll find there's a video I've done on it, and I think it's called, there's a whole bunch of them. There's a phone app, and I think it's something like Treasure, 5e Treasure or something like that. I can't honestly remember the exact name. And you can just punch that in and it'll spit out what you want. So don't feel like you have to always put treasure on a monster. They might not be happy about it, but you don't have to do it. Okay? But yes, give them things that are a little bit unusual and odd. Often I will give them items that seem like they might be useful or expensive, but in fact they are just a MacGuffin for later on when I run a new adventure, and it doesn't activate or get used till later on. Does that make sense? Okay, Matt, what do you got here? One of them wants to take parts of creatures and do something to them, I guess. Look, let the player cut off parts of the animal. If it's intact, go for it. It's not going to be an issue. So honestly, what I would do is I would just let them do that. Okay? One of the most important things to understand about players is they want a trophy. If they can't find treasure, if they can't find gear, if they can't find magic items, let them cut the eye out of a beholder. Let them cut the tooth from a hydra. Okay, I don't think there's going to be very much in a shambling mound that you can salvage, but maybe you can think of something. Okay, let them cut off the things they think would be useful. They might come up with a clever idea of what to use it for later on, or trade it for something else, or it might just be something that they continue to collect and it becomes part of their character, forming a necklace or a band, or just a whole lot of knickknacks to remind them of what they've done in the past. I really like that concept, but is there a way to do this, or should I homebrew it? No, you just do it. You don't have to come up with anything fancy, Matt. If they want to cut parts off the animal, just do it. The easiest way, if you really want to make them make a skill check of some kind, you can, and I would just use something that you feel is appropriate. Maybe a survival check, maybe a nature check, depending on the type of creature. If it's, more arcana, this is more about sort of like surgically removing and cutting something free. But if it's not got any danger behind it, so if it doesn't have any venom or there's no danger of them removing the part, all it comes down to is, do they remove it intact without making a mess? So yeah, just pick a skill that you think is appropriate and go with that. Okay, Rabid Human. I'm playing a bear totem half-orc barbarian. Oh my god. 4 currently. And I have stats of 18, 15, 16, 8, 6 and 8, 10. Ho, man, that's a powerful barbarian. Okay, all right. And a level 4 I took the Orcish Fury feat. Okay. We also have a fighter with an 18 AC in our team. Well, you're a bear totem, half-orc barbarian. There isn't very much that could possibly hurt you. You might lose hit points, but who cares? You're going to have like a truckload of them. So, yes. I imagine you're having a great time. It must be difficult, even when you get reduced to 0 hit points, that half-orc feature kicks in and you're still standing. So, I'm not sure that there's a question here, but I like the idea. I've seen a few people play that sort of character, and scary. Matt likes my advice. Good. Rabid human. Sorry. The problem I have is that enemies are also running a lot past us to go and attack the lower AC players. Any way to stop them better? Yes, there is a way. So something like the feat Sentinel. Okay, provided that it comes off, Sentinel can stop them moving. So that's probably the only way. And as the Dungeon Master, yes, I would be running past you as well, trying to get to the squishy ones. So if you want to stop that happening, go with something like Sentinel, because you can stop people moving past you. You can't stop them moving around you if they stay out of your threatened range, but that's probably the easiest way to deal with that. Another thing that I've seen players do who ran into the same issue you have is they used a polearm, which gave them extra reach, and the Sentinel feat. You're probably going to have to wait a few levels before you can do something like that, though. So yes, that's one way of dealing with a problem. Another way is to make sure you position yourself in the environment slightly differently. Rather than placing yourself in such a way that they can move past you, make sure you are blocking the corridor as much as you can. Forming that wall, you know, rather than in a big open area, it's very hard. You know, creatures and monsters can get around you. Matt, what do you got here? Okay, and the last one, because I'm sure you have places to be. Okay. All right, so the last one, you've got one more question. Throw it at me, Matt. I've answered both of your questions. So if you've got another question, fire away. Rabid Human, you are happy with your advice? Good, excellent. I'm just going to have a drink of water before I get dry and start falling over. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, I always trim my videos down. You might have to wait a while, but all the live streams get re-released as an edited video and just a shorter form. I get rid of all the questions and answers at the end and all the setup at the beginning. Rabid Human, have a good night. Heading off. Okay, you have a good night too, mate. I'm glad I could help. All the best with that barbarian. Matt, what do you got here? The Lost Mine of Phandelver is made for 5 people. But is it okay to have more, and how would I do that? Okay, so I ran the Lost Mine of Phandelver with 7 people. Okay, 7. I don't recommend it, but yes, you can do that. My suggestion to you is you will find that the combat encounters will get significantly easier. Matt, they will get much, much easier. So to compensate for that, add a few more monsters. And you don't need to worry about how many monsters you add. What I mean by that is, start off with what you get given in the adventure and run those through. Then you can gauge, once they've demolished those monsters, or just about demolished all those monsters, if that's what they do, if they fight them, then you look at, I want to bring in a second wave. How many more do I think the players can deal with before things start getting tricky? So what you do is your backup plan, if it's getting too easy, is to bring in more enemies and monsters and a second wave, but only once you've played through the first collection of monsters. Some people with a party of 7 do very well, and some groups with a party of 7 do very, very poorly, simply because they have horrible rolls or bad strategy, or they don't really fully understand how to use their character, and that's just because they're new to the game. Okay, so that's one way of dealing with it. Another way is to change the environment, but I feel like that's a lot of extra work for a new dungeon master, so I don't recommend doing that. My suggestion to you is just add more monsters in a second wave if you feel like it was just way too easy. Now remember, you want to think about, I've got a whole location for them to explore. I don't need to make every single encounter challenging. Some encounters can be easy, some can be medium in terms of difficulty, and some can be hard, and some can be, if you really want, deadly. Now the only ones that I would suggest that you make deadly is the encounter with the dragon Venom Fang, because it's a dragon, and the only other one that I can think of that really should be deadly is the encounter with Nesna the Black Spider. All the other characters, not quite so important, even those other NPCs like Clark, Gruul, and who else is there? Hum and Cost. all of those, you don't need to worry about getting too carried away. Okay? So yes, hopefully that's been helpful to you, Matt. Did I answer the question? Did I get you the information you were hoping for? I know it's something you probably already guessed at. Thanks so much there. There is so much to take in, so I'll be back next time with more questions. Well, you're welcome to do so, Matt. You are most welcome. Okay? Alright, so we will see you. Now remember, I live stream a lot, so you can probably hit me up as often as you see me online, because I always open it up for a live chat. Questions about anything. Okay? Doesn't have to relate to the topic. Okay, that's it, guys. I am going to head off. I am getting tired and I need to go and rest. So, hey, thank you for those of you who showed up. If you were a bit late, I'm sorry. YouTube will release the video probably in about an hour, and then you'll be able to watch the whole thing. Okay? All right. So, good night to everybody. Have a good night. Oh, what do we got here? Anthony, sorry. Fred, you are early for me in the UK, but glad you re-upload, as I have had to take over duties for our group from a very experienced DM. Your videos really help. Good. I'm glad they do. Make sure you ask me lots of questions, Anthony. Okay? Ask me as many questions as you possibly can. There are a lot of people who are experienced dungeon masters who jump into my my live chats too, by the way. All right, I'm going to catch up with everybody. Have a good night, a good evening, a good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. Look after your family, look after yourself, and don't do anything I wouldn't do. I'll see you later.